Okay, we're going to call the committee of the whole meeting to order. It is Tuesday, October 24th at 7:30 p.m. First item on the agenda is roll call.
7:30.
O'Brien?
Oh, it is.
Here.
I'm like 7 minutes.
Rosato?
Here.
Chansett?
Readjust.
Wolf?
Here.
Salvate?
Here.
Callahan? Meitzler?
Here.
Malay?
Here.
Ewer?
Here.
Saron? Atack?
Here.
Stark? McFadden?
Here.
Brown?
Here. Yeah, we have a quorum. Next item is items to be removed, added, or changed. I don't believe we have any. Does anybody else have anything? Okay. Item 3, matters from the public for items that are not on the agenda. If anybody from the public wants to address us for items that are not on the agenda. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. 2 items under the consent agenda. The first one is item A, which is the Water Street Studios, the forgiveness loan, year 8 of 10 to BEI. This is a memo that came from Peggy Colby. It's the forgiveness of the loan for the Water Street Studios. The other one is item B, resolution 17-114-R, accepting the grant of easement for the property located at 607 South Jefferson Street. Memo came from Tim Grimm. Anybody have any questions on those? Can I get a motion to recommend the City Council approval of the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Atack, second by Salvati. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 5, Resolution 17-120-R, authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Batavia and the Housing Authority of Elgin. Memo from Scott Buning. Scott, I'm just going to ask you to present that to us.
Sure. First off, I want to mention that this has absolutely nothing to do with the Camp Hannah project or the Aurora Housing Authority. This is a completely separate agenda item. I just wanted to clarify that up front. As you may or may not be aware, the city has had 2 different housing authorities, actually 3 different housing authorities that have some level of operation within the city limits. In this case, this is the Elgin Housing Authority. They have been the authority that has been chosen as part of the Windmill Manor project to have vouchers issued for their project, the senior housing project on Hawks Drive. And when we were investigating some things in regards to housing authorities, we found out the Housing Authority of Elgin didn't actually have an intergovernmental agreement with the city to service properties within the city limits. They already had vouchers within the city limits and, that are in the actual ordinance and the intergovernmental agreement. So we wanted to make sure that we were covering them under an intergovernmental agreement so they could actually service the folks that are already being serviced, plus the Windmill Manor project. So that's the purpose of the ordinance, and the intergovernmental agreement is to establish an intergovernmental agreement with them. What it will do is it'll limit the number of vouchers to 40 total, which includes the Windmill Manor project and all the existing vouchers that are out there. And it also allows us to have specific geographical locations where they can service properties. So they cannot service properties outside of those addresses unless they amend the intergovernmental agreement. So that's pretty much what it is in a summary.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Scott?
Question.
Scott.
So how is it that we're able to have vouchers already in place without an intergovernmental agreement?
Well, we have an older intergovernmental agreement with the Aurora Housing Authority that allows them to issue some vouchers, even though they don't actually have any vouchers issued. The Elgin Housing Authority has asserted that they have the authority countywide to provide housing vouchers because they are a housing authority that governs areas that don't have other housing authorities. We looked into all of our ordinances and everything else to try and find something that would say that they actually have authority within the city of Batavia. We could find nothing, so this essentially kind of grandfathers the existing vouchers.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion to recommend the City Council approval of Resolution 17-120-R?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ewer, second by McFadden. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. We could probably put that on consent, huh? Anybody have a problem with that? Okay. All right, item number 6, Resolution 17-119-R, awarding the contract to Carbon Day Automotive and Advanced Data Technologies for supply and installation of an electric vehicle charging station for an amount of not to exceed $15,000. Alderman O'Brien?
We've been talking with staff, and staff's been talking with representatives of the Environmental Commission regarding electric vehicle charging stations. And they're coming forward with, I guess there are 3 levels of it, and Gary can walk us through it, but their staff is coming forward with a resolution for such. So Gary, I'll hand it off to you, please.
Thank you. In combination with the program that we had brought forward to the commission or the committee earlier this year, we've been working with the Environmental Commission on initiatives related to electric vehicle charging and electric vehicles and promoting electric vehicles in town. The committee earlier this year approved us including in the 2018 budget proposal a program for rebates of chargers in people's personal homes in order to promote individuals to purchase electric vehicles and have them charge and use our electric system overnight. This next item that we're bringing tonight is to promote having a charger here at City Hall in our west parking lot, so the parking lot right out the window there, to again promote the use of electric vehicles and encourage people to bring them and use them on the Riverwalk or in downtown and have them here to charge. So first of all, what is it? And I'll briefly go through this because everyone has seen the memo, but I will spend a minute and a half and run through it real quick. There are different types of charging devices. We're proposing what's known as a level 2 charging device, which is the most common device today that we find out in the public areas. You'll find them in shopping centers or at the libraries or at hotels. Level 2 chargers are about the best technology that's available currently at a reasonable price. Level 1 chargers are something you would just plug into your household wall socket and you can charge your vehicle overnight. A hybrid type vehicle that uses a plug-in hybrid type vehicle may take 8 hours to charge using a level 1 charger. But it's fine for overnight if you're just parking and go to bed at night and wake up in the morning. Level 2 chargers would do that same type of charge in about 3 to 4 hours. And then level 3 are quick chargers, DC fast chargers. Those are most commonly used right now by like the Tesla vehicles. Those in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes can completely charge an electric vehicle. They're also really expensive right now, and the infrastructure, the wires, the electric infrastructure used to support those is more robust and therefore more expensive. So we're proposing a level 2 charger. We're proposing to get a charger as part of an overall network. That's the most popular way. It seems to be the most popular way for agencies, communities, private entities to implement them. Kane County has had a charger up there now for the last 3 or 4 years. They're part of the Charge Point network, which is one of several national networks out there and one of the biggest ones in Chicagoland. That's the one that we're recommending to become part of. So Charge Point will enable you to take your smartphone and use an app like PlugShare, and all of a sudden you'll see all the local chargers that are close to you. And so your charger will be visible on the app. You can have a Charge Point account so that when you pull up to the charger out there, you can either have your QR code on your phone or swipe your credit card, and you just pay. You already have an account set up with Charge Point to pay for the charge. Charge Point collects the money from you. They then give that revenue, or they take a percentage of that revenue, and then they pass on the remaining revenue to the city as far as electric usage goes. So we can charge whatever we would like for the per kilowatt hour charge, and as I said, we have not yet determined the exact rate. Kane County uses a rate of 30 cents per kilowatt hour, but certainly we'll work with finance to establish a rate that is appropriate and covers our costs. If 30 cents an hour, we'll do that, or if we need to do 40 cents an hour. But that's something we'll work through to make sure that we're covering our costs in an appropriate rate. So this is something that people will pay for. It's not free. The Outlet Mall in North Aurora is an example of one that is free because they want people to go there, plug in their car, and then go shopping. So, I mean, they want to encourage people to be there to go shop in the stores. But in our case, we're fine to be charging. Upfront, we'll need to purchase a charger. We'll need to purchase basically the airtime, the contract time with ChargePoint to administer on our behalf. And we'd also recommend that we purchase a maintenance agreement with them. All of this for up to 3 years goes into the total cost that they had quoted of $9,529. And then installation, we could do it with our own crews, but right now our workload is such that we feel it's just better and get a certified contractor so that we don't have to pay a separate validation fee. So the total cost of installation is about $4,600. That's why we're recommending then Resolution 17-119 for a total amount not to exceed $15,000. That will then provide us with a charger, all the installation, it's not really a contract, but essentially the contract for 3 years and maintenance for 3 years. So this would be a $15,000 that'll get us through the first 3 years, plus then have the hardware for time after that. The map on the screen just shows where the charger is going. I was asked one time to bring a map which shows potentially all the things that might be done in front of City Hall. So that would show where the charger would go, and then the 2 spaces that would at least have access to the charger. And I'll open up to question.
Any questions or comments? Scott?
So I know that Kane County has a charging station there. Do we know, based on the kilowatt hours that we'd be charging or what they've charged, do you know what sort of revenue stream we would have on an annual basis projected conservative?
I don't know, and this is really not being set up to become a revenue generator. This isn't meant to be a revenue generator. It's meant to be more of the electric utility, increasing awareness and encouraging electric vehicle use, both like we talked about last time, both from the promotion of green aspects, but also from the promotion of if people have electric vehicles sitting in their garage overnight charging, it's a good overnight load for us on our electric system.
And I get, maybe rephrase that. I'm not necessarily looking to make a huge profit, but that would be great. Are we going to be covering our costs?
Yeah, I think that's
with that projected stream against it?
That's where we need to work with finance, and Peggy and I will figure out, and using usage that we have, and again, the upfront cost of $15,000, and projected that over the life to make sure that we're covering those costs. I don't have the exact dollar value though in front of me today, but that would be our goal, yes.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, I like this idea. I like the idea of promoting the electric vehicles. I think that's, what we should be doing. But in the memo in particular, I noticed that it said this is clearly not a budgeted item. Given the warnings we've been hearing, is there a reason why we should be acting on this now as opposed to making it a budgeted item for 2018?
What mornings? And no, we could make it a budgeted item for 2018 if that's what council felt we wanted to do.
Okay.
It's just a cash flow thing at this point. I mean, whether we budget for it don't budget for it in 2017 and take it out of reserves, or we budget for it in 18 and take it out of the budgeted same account, in the end, it's the same thing.
Lucy?
I like the idea. I think it's a great idea. I wasn't sure what you meant when you said cover costs with, 40 cents. What was it, 40 cents for, how long did you, or just whatever.
We'll probably charge on a
electric they
kilowatt
use.
hour
Okay.
basis. The hotel charges in Aurora, they charge on an hourly basis.
Okay.
I believe they do that because people are probably likely to park there overnight as they're staying in the hotel. And this way they charge someone on an hourly basis.
But I remember when we talked about kind of getting a map of how everything was going to be laid out. And I guess my concern is are we sure this is where we want it? And are these changes that we know we're going to make? And how is this all, I don't remember the discussion after trying to see a map and talking about having it designed.
That's because we've never brought it back, and that's
Okay.
because none of those changes are proposed right now. That's basically to give you the idea of where everything could lay out. The electric vehicle charging station was chosen in that location because those are kind of the 2 farthest spaces out from the door. And I do say in my memo that right now we're not going to sign those explicitly. But to be honest with you, 95% of the time that parking lot's not full. It's only the times, I mean, sometimes on night meetings like this, or if there's a concert going on in the park, maybe in a week, I mean, then that lot is full, but 90% of the time that lot's not full. So those two spaces could be designated as electric only, but we don't want to go there quite yet.
Right. Well, so if we end up deciding that we want to change the parking lot configuration as we're working to change the entrance area, can this be moved easily? The charging station?
We're not going to change the west parking lot configuration at this point.
All right, there had been talk of doing that at one point, kind of redoing.
There was when there was grant funds available, and those the city did not receive any of those grants. And so that was 2010. I mean, that was almost when I first got here that they talked about that. I don't think there's been any plans or discussion with the Park District or anyone to talk about reconfiguring that west parking lot.
So this is the way it's going to stay?
The west parking lot, yeah.
Okay.
Mark?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. However, do we know what, Kane County's break-even cost has been on this? I mean, in a business, I wouldn't spend money if I wasn't going to at least break even. So I'm just trying to figure out what is Kane County's experience, what are other experiences at rate, and what's your ROI?
Again, this isn't entirely about.
I get that, but I don't.
This is about promoting people to have an electric vehicle sitting in their garage.
I get that. But there's a point. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, if we make $1,000 on it, I mean, people will question us spending $14,000 and not getting anything back on it. So there needs to be something.
No, I think
value besides just looking, hey, we're doing our part, but we're wasting taxpayer money at that point.
But if we can get 10 electric vehicles, I mean, we went through the numbers when we did the charging station. If somebody puts an electric vehicle in their garage and charges it every night, they're going to increase their overall electric consumption between 15 and 20%. If we get every household in town to increase their electric consumption by 15 and 20%, a lot of our problems would be solved. But there's just no. I don't know how to best answer your question except to say that the city, at least in our opinion, the city needs to take steps to start promoting different ways to increase our load. We don't have data centers knocking on our door, so we need to look at creative ways, and some of that might mean putting out a little bit of a cost. And this is a very modest cost at $15,000 in order to promote the idea to start getting these out there into people's garages. And our goal will be to cover this cost. I mean, that'll be, through the life of the unit. And the unit is not over with at 3 years. The unit, we just have, the initial contracts for 3 years, so.
I just want to know if anybody's covering their costs at this point. I'm just curious. I mean, it's like solar panels. They're not entirely efficient, and you get to a point that they're 15 to 80% efficient, so you may never cover your costs as a homeowner, and you're just doing it to, hey, this feels like the right thing.
Right, and that's what the city did.
We're not
when we
quite there,
did,
and if we're just not quite there, that's the challenge I have is in 3 years, is it better and we're there? Then it makes a better financial investment.
When we put, I think it was almost $40,000 that the city invested in solar panels on the Public Works facility.
Right.
And we had that same discussion at that time, and I think the consensus of the council at that time was that we're probably never going to recoup that money. But we can say to the community that, we're trying to explore alternative energy sources as best we can. We have a 55 megawatt coal power plant sitting southeast of St. Louis, and we all need to do other sources as well. And so, I understand the question and where you're coming from. And I guess the previous council felt that way exactly about the solar and ended up going forward because it was just the right thing to do, they felt. And so that's some of this tonight, too.
Alan?
I guess along what Scott said, I'd like to know what the return is on it, because I think if this does work or if it does pay off in a certain period of time and we can justify that, I see that this is not only just a draw to try to get people to use an electric vehicle and to add more to the electric system, but I also think it makes downtown more viable for the consumers to be here. If this works and we can pay for it in 5 years or 10 years or whatever the numbers are, and we can justify that, I could see us putting them in other places downtown.
Like parking garage.
Right, and that's why I want to see this. So I'm not afraid of I'll say gamble with 10 or 15 grand to see how this works here and see how it is in our situation. Because I don't know if you can really even compare it to a place like a county office where they have a lot higher traffic pattern. So, I mean, it's not like if we were going to compare it to the outlet mall, there's no comparison because of the amount of cars that are in there every day. So I'd almost think that we have to look at it from our own standpoint, have it out there for a year or two, and then see what the real numbers are to be able to figure out how long it's going to take to pay it
I think
off.
it'd be good for the city to get one on North River Street where we could have someone come spend 3 hours in a restaurant and drinks beforehand. I mean,
Right.
that's where
That's where I was going.
That's where the community may have the cost of the charger, but the community also recoups it on the back end by patronage of the businesses. I mean, so that there's a bigger, larger picture there.
I think this is a good thing. And I think it shows, responsible government like we did at the Public Works Building. And I think it's the future. I mean, we have to do more than just keep burning carbon fuels. And so I think it is the future. And I can see it happening where we're going to have this. We're going to have more stations in town, I believe. I think it's going to happen. And people are going to find out that it's a lot less expensive to drive your car around town with electric power. And so, and our electric utility needs it. It only helps us there. So I think this is the future. So I would definitely support it.
Staff will work on a financial analysis. I mean, obviously, it's a concern of city councils. I'll touch base with Peggy. We can put calls into the surrounding chargers. Again, some of them are apples and oranges. As Alderman Wolf pointed out, I don't know that we're the same comparison as the outlet mall where they're turning over cars all the time, but we certainly can still see what the experiences are of the other people around to give council a feel for that.
So I guess, is that the best place? I mean, we talked about this parking lot, but is it better served along Houston? Is that a better place that people are going to see it more often and be like, oh, that's a good place because they're driving there? I mean, it's that's where everybody drives. People don't just, oops, I turned around and then notice it. Is Houston a better spot?
Knowing several customers of mine and relatives that have electric cars, they do it all from their car or they do it all from their phone. They look for those places. They know, okay, I'm going to be in Batavia for the afternoon. I think I might have to charge the car. They will look for that. They have the apps to find that, and that's how they locate where they can charge the car. It's just, as long as there's one relatively close, they will find it. Because that's how they find it. They don't drive around and look for them. They know where they're at.
But just seeing it, you drive past it without looking for it, without having to search for it, you would be, oh, I know that there's one there and not have to go look it up. That was my only question.
So we knew that we were going to be running we knew that we were going to be performing directional boring and running conduits through that parking lot as part of the Park District project. And that's done. So all we did so far was run one extra conduit from the box that's out there already, and you can see where the box is when you walk out there. Literally 5 feet away, we ran one conduit that comes out of the bottom of that box, goes over 5 feet to a handhole. And that's all we did so far in preparation for this. And the rest of everything else that comes out of that box was already going to be there anyways for the rest of the project. So it's sitting out there and ready to go at this point.
And I think to Alan's point, I mean, if we're using ChargePoint, we become part of their family. We go on their map, and I mean it's all done that way. I mean that's just.
Dave.
So there's no work, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, in order to put it in this location. The electric infrastructure.
Keeps the upfront costs much lower.
Yeah.
So Gary, I just got one, I think it's a good idea. I just got one question for you on it. If this is approved, how long does it take to get it done? What's their timeline on this?
I would like to have it done before the winter flies. We have, they're going to connect those two spaces with little 4-foot wide sidewalks so that people can walk on a concrete sidewalk up to the charger. The charger will be facing, so the front of the charger will be facing east towards City Hall. And there will be cords on the left and right side, or the north and south side of the charger, that people then can access. So east of the charger, or between the charger and City Hall, will be this little 4-foot sidewalk that they can walk on and then just go to the front of the charger. I'd like to get that done before wintertime flies, and the contractor knows that, so.
So do we have to do a budget amendment for this then?
It's such a small amount, we have extra funds in those
Okay.
accounts.
Anybody else? Anyone care to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Salvati, second by McFadden. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Put it on the regular agenda then. Item 7, Resolution 17-112-R, authorizing final change order to the contract with Archon Construction Company for directional boring of the 15 kV service for the downtown businesses and residents along Wilson Street, River Street, Washington Avenue, and State Street in the amount of $70,417.53. Alderman O'Brien.
Well, just as the memo says, it's just cleaning up a change order, cleaning up a contract. I guess they ran into some unexpected bedrock and other complications, so I'll let you take it from there, Gary.
Sure, and so that's one aspect of it, was during the course of construction, and I'll use Wilson Street as one of the examples, when we came from Washington Street westward, came from Washington Street westward down the hill on Wilson, the bedrock was such that they weren't able to do directional boring, so they had to do test holes and open digging there, which cost them additional time and money. Taking 3 steps back, when this was first awarded, if you recall, this was being done on an expedited schedule in anticipation of the overall development that was going to happen there. We also did the demolition on an expedited schedule. We did working on land acquisition at that point in time, and we did the environmental remediation of those buildings on an expedited schedule. So kind of everything at that point in time was full steam ahead to get work over there done in preparation for what was at that time a June 1st turnover date of the property. So that's part of the equation here that played into, some of these locations. If we had more time, we would have gone out, we could have done borings ahead of time. We would have identified the higher bedrock. So we would have paid for those borings, and we would have been paid for the contractor to do the open excavation. So it's not as if the work wouldn't have cost anything, it's just that we would have known it ahead of time, and they would have bid on it, but doing a different methodology. So certainly some of this could have been mitigated, not eliminated, but mitigated by kind of having that longer time frame on the front end, which we just weren't afforded the luxury to have. But these were, and Mustafa was out there several times a day throughout the course of the project. He kept his daily logs. He has negotiated with the contractor because he did not feel that some of the costs that they originally submitted were accurate. So he has broken it down and does agree then with the times and dates and values that are shown here. So that's why we are recommending to move forward and approve this change order.
Okay, anyone, questions or comments?
This
ahead,
would be
Scott.
TIF eligible?
This is a TIF eligible expense, yes.
Alan?
The question I have is the repair unlocated streetlights damaged by directional bore. Is this stuff that we didn't have located correctly, or stuff that we didn't know was there? Was put in.
Was not located correctly, and at the time, didn't have, we were in, I don't want to say a dispute, we were in strong conversations with IDOT as to whose responsibility they were. And so we left it at they ultimately became our responsibility, and I think rightly so.
Okay.
So it's like 40% of the contract, which
This
is
is-
kind of high.
Yes.
Yeah, but I understand that, unforeseen conditions, and I knew we were in a race at the time. And I'm glad you said what you said, Gary, regarding Moose watching it. I was going to ask that question. Was there a resident engineer keeping an eye on time? Because
Right.
time is money.
And not only was, he was overseeing and playing the hawk of Archon, also overseeing AT&T and Comcast. We ended up getting a check back from AT&T because they had given us a price, and then Moose was able to say, well, you guys didn't spend that much time out there, and then we ended up getting a check back. But then we also had our own crews out there doing all this too, our own electric guys.
So just another question for you is, I'm looking at a day at $4,135. What constitutes that money?
4 days at $4,135. So those are the unlocated street lights. So
No,
that-
I just did that, it's that $4,135. Is that just for a crew cost?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, so that's the
okay.
directional boring crew cost.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, anybody else have comments or questions? Anyone care to make a motion?
Just one more quick question.
Yeah, please.
May not quite be relevant, but at what point do we realize, date-wise, that bedrock was shallow?
That was just in that one instant, and we realized it during the course of construction.
And but time frame wise, when was that?
Do you remember when Wilson Street was happening? Mayish? I mean, it had to be April, Mayish. Because we were going to be finishing this up by June 1st.
I guess I would just say thank you to Moose, first off. Well done. But yeah, anything, I think going forward that we can do to just, do that boring and know what we're getting into, I think we should start making sure we're doing that.
We always try to. I mean, that's our
I know we
standard
do.
course of operation. This one was, we got to get it done.
Right. Anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by McFadden, second by Ewer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll consent that, Dave.
Yeah, probably put that on the regular agenda since we're spending the money, huh?
Okay.
All right, item number 8, discussion on the Batavia Avenue pedestrian crossing. Memo from Rahat. Gary, you going to take that, or?
No, I'll let Rahat take that one.
Okay.
I know which ones to sit down for.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna actually go to the pictures. I have different options listed in there. Taking a few steps back, during July 11th COW meeting, Council talked about what to do with the Batavia Avenue crossing, especially at Modern Street, Union, and McKee. The Council was more concerned about the McKee Street, but it's all along Batavia, so we talked about all three. So Council directed us to go back as staff and meet with different departments and come back with a recommendation. So we are here to provide you that recommendation. We met a couple of times and discussed the memo and different options through emails and at senior staff meeting, and then here is our recommendation. So I'm going to go to the first one, the option 1 that we could go with, that is called the Hawk system. So this is a typical photo of what a Hawk system looks like. Gary actually showed a video during the July 11 meeting, if you remember. So if somebody presses, if a pedestrian just comes over here on the other side, presses the button to cross, then it goes from, so the drivers are looking at number 1, it's all dark at this time, and then it starts going to flashing yellow. You can't see it because I think the picture was taken when it was flashing off. So it goes from flashing yellow to flash steady yellow and goes red for the car. So at that point, it's all red for the vehicle. So they stop, and the pedestrian gets a white menu or walk button or signal. So they start crossing, and they also get a countdown ped head. So they know how many seconds they have to cross the street. And at that point, this remains red. And then once that countdown goes to 0, the pedestrian gets a hand signal saying you can't cross, and those red signals goes away. So it goes to blank again. So this is pretty much the Hawk system, and there are a lot of pros. A lot of states and cities have been using it. It's proven that it reduces the accident. It's almost like a de facto signal system. People understand the reds and yellows and all that. Unfortunately, District 1, IDOT, where Batavia Avenue is under their jurisdiction, they don't allow this in the District 1. And the primary reason they said that when the signals are blank, it's considered that as a driver, we have been taught to stop. If your signal had not lighted up with either green, red, or yellow, you are supposed to stop and then proceed with caution. The primary reason is there could be electricity power not being fed to the signal system. So they are not allowing this. So this is something that have been documented throughout the United States that this works and people understand what to do. But not to say that I have been to a seminar a couple of weeks ago where they talked about that no matter whether it's a signalized intersection like Wilson and let's say 31, or it's an unsignalized intersection, you will never be able to get rid of the pedestrian accidents. It reduces the number of accidents, but the accidents are still going to be there because somebody is going to be running through the red light, somebody is not going to be paying attention, somebody is going to be drunk, So there are a lot of things that happen. So pedestrian accidents are going to be there. You're just reducing the percentage. So option 2 that we talked about, so this is what our signal or Batavia and McKee and Batavia and Union and all those 3 intersections looks like. So we have a solar powered RRFB, which is the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So if somebody presses, there are a couple of lights here just underneath that crossing sign, and it goes flashing yellow, and the cars are supposed to stop for the pedestrian, and then pedestrians are supposed to cross, or bikers. What we are proposing is a little bit different than what you just saw. So this is what we have right now. We are proposing is that we put a mast arm and we put the same setting on the top of the mast arm. I'll get to why we are proposing this or why the staff is preferring this system. And also, couple of hundred feet ahead of that, we put another one so that people are able to see that flashing signal, that it's flashing 200 feet before they reach that actual crossing. So they see that, they see this overhead, and they see this signal also on the side. So you're taking one signal and making it really 3 signals. The primary reason is that this picture actually tells you that if a bus is on that outside lane, or a truck, or a bigger SUV, and you're on a smaller car, you're not aware that somebody is crossing because that light is flashing on the right side if you're in the inside vehicle, it's flashing on the right, and you have no clue that pedestrian is crossing or a biker is coming. So they call it that triangle where people don't see it. I have another picture of that. So so if somebody even stops for that pedestrian to be crossing, once the pedestrian is over here, this car has no clue that why this car is stopping or slowing down. So he's steaming ahead, and this pedestrian comes out kind of blind for that vehicle. So that's why we are proposing that we actually go to this, where if you are in the inside lane, you can see the flashing on top of you, in front of you. And also you're seeing it 200 feet ahead of approaching the intersection. Another improvement that it's not showing in this picture is that we are proposing overhead lights, so that during the nighttime or daylight today, when somebody presses that, or it could be automatically illuminated, that it's always lighted up and it's showing the crosswalk. So if you're on a car, you can see that crosswalk lighted at nighttime. Because again, this is something I stole from that seminar or presentation that I went to. They said lighting actually reduces the accidents by 42%, and at intersection it's by 54%. So that's why this is the option 2 that staff is really recommending. The other 2 options, option 3 and 4, option 3 was something that we talked about, is changing the Batavia Avenue to a road diet situation. So you convert the 31, take 4 lanes and change it to 2 lanes, so 1 lane in each direction, plus a turning lane in the middle. That's something we can talk to IDOT, but it is going to be a lengthy process. I actually called the IDOT geometric guy, and he said, you probably don't want to do that because we have so many side streets compared to the portion that Geneva converted, that people will not be able to make turns. Because when you go to one lane during rush hour and other times, there'll be steady stream of traffic going north and south. Nobody able to make turns, right turns, or you can say goodbye to the left turn. So if you are going the other way, it will be very difficult during rush hours. So they said, based on the traffic count that we have, it's most likely gonna be not accepted by IDOT. The traffic on Geneva side is much lower than our traffic. So, and they have only 5 side streets compared to our 18 side streets. And also the section between Wilson and Main Street will remain 2-lane in each direction anyway, because it's the signalized intersection and you just want to make the traffic go through those 2 intersections. So that's the option 3. And the last option was something that also we discussed, is remove all this rapid flashing beacon. We discussed that as a staff, and we felt that that will be almost like turning back the clock. And here we just talked about going electric vehicle charging station moving forward, that how can we make the city more livable, more friendly to all our residents, different type of residents. So this morning I went to an ADA seminar where they talked about Disability Act, and I thought they put it very nice way, that today many of us are not disabled or healthy, that we can walk, we can push a stroller, but one day is going to come, we are all going to reach there that where we'll need that access, where we cannot open a door anymore with our energy. So you need those accessibility. So staff felt that taking it out or removing it is almost going backward. We are not making the city more pedestrian friendly, more bikers friendly. So we are recommending option 2, which is enhancing the existing pedestrian crossings that we have. And that's what that seminar was talking about, that there is no magic pill, that this works. There is nothing like that. You have to make improvements and make it safer. It's never going to be 100% proof. You'll always have an accident here and there, but you can tell, you can make some improvements and tell that we have done enough that we think it's safer than before. It's not something that we left for people to judge. As a city, we are trying to make things safer for our residents.
Alan, this is actually your thing here, so I'll let you take it.
Well, I'll let Scott talk. Go ahead.
I know you had something, but one of the questions I had was, because I've actually been in a situation where I was pulling a trailer, and I was coming north on Batavia Avenue, and I was in the left-hand lane, so we're coming up to Union, and the lights went off, and I was slowing down to stop, but there was a car on the right that decided he wanted to, head up, so I pulled up slowly to the crosswalk, but this guy just zipped on through, and there were 2 girls. I had to lay on my horn to scare the girls, to let them know, to not cross. So in one of these images, you have a picture of a line, of a stopping line, further back to kind of eliminate that triangle or extend that. Is that something that would be part of this?
Yes, we will be recommending that to the IDOT.
Right.
So that people stop farther back.
Right. Okay.
And it should give anybody a clue that why this car is stopping on the side of the road. So
Okay.
I don't know whether IDOT will, I'll tell you that, IDOT will allow that. They're very touchy about putting things on the road, so.
Yeah.
Mike?
So, Rahad, are you saying that option 2 is safer than option 1?
I mean, all the statistics is showing that if you make, if you light the intersection, it reduces the accidents. If you put a signal head for the inside lane, if you make these improvements, it makes it much more safer than just having a standalone on the side.
Right, but the safest is option 1.
They are not saying that. They are saying that that's something they have statistics. They are showing that it reduces, even for the rapid flashing beacon that we have. They have done studies throughout the United States, and they said it reduces the pedestrian accidents by 79%. Okay, so they're saying their study is showing that if there was 100 accidents before, now they have only 21 accidents in that intersection. So these are all numbers, those are based on research that they have done. So
I don't know, these are all statistics from these studies, right? And so they're just numbers. I see a red light, I stop. Everyone sees a red light, they stop. They see a flashing yellow light, they slow down, they look around, but they continue to go forward. So I'd be more inclined to go with the Hawk system for that reason. If we're really saying we want people to be safe. Now, I understand IDOT's opposed to that, but, I mean, eventually you're going to have to come around. And so, I mean, we're trying to keep people safe here. It's flow of traffic's important, but it's human life more important, right? And so I don't know how to go around IDOT, not that we're looking to go around IDOT, but.
So one of the things that I have at the end, that we are proposing that we make immediate enhancement to our existing system and pursue something bigger for future, for especially for McKee, that we pursue a signal system or Hawks. I didn't say Hawk system, we said signal system, because we know they are not allowing Hawks, but they do allow traffic signal. So we were saying that let's make an intermediate improvement so that we can do it within 6 months or so, and then keep pursuing with IDOT, either a signal system or we could still talk about Hawk system. But if we pursue the Hawks, and it takes them time to make those decisions, because they cannot just allow it to us. They have to allow it to some other cities too. It may take 2-3 years. So what's happening within that 2-3 years? Are we not doing anything, or what do we want to do? So that's why we were kind of proposing the option 2, that make the immediate improvements that we know that will make it safer, that we believe will make it safer. The research shows that. And then we will pursue the signal system for McKee, at least for that intersection.
Mark?
Okay, so if the problem with the Hawk system is people look at it and they're like, oh, there's no lights on, I should stop. So there's a stupid question. Why can't we just have a regular signal there, and somebody pushes a button and then it activates a regular signal that everybody recognizes, red, yellow, green?
So to put a signal system, you need to meet some warrants and our current traffic volume.
No, I understand that. But why would they offer a Hawk system that is a pedestrian activated system that does things that people aren't used to seeing versus a pedestrian activated system that goes red, yellow, green, and most of the time it's green, or sorry, it goes green, yellow, red. Most of the time it's green.
Actually, they have that. They have that.
That seems like that would be the most logical thing that everybody would understand is how a traffic light works. Is that not an option to do something that's logical to everybody?
That's something a lot of states are doing it, and when we said that we are going to pursue the option of a signal system, that's what we were thinking, that if this intersection doesn't meet the signal warrant, we will tell them that let's have a signal system there which will be always green.
Yep.
But if somebody pushes, it goes to red. So that will be an alternative that we'll be pursuing.
Would they approve that? Is that approved by?
We haven't had that discussion with them. We haven't seen it in anywhere. At least I haven't seen it in District 1 anywhere.
Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely supportive of the additional lighting. I think dusk and even morning hours, when we have a lot of riders that are trying to get out before or after the traffic, rush hours. My concern with the rapid flash beacons that we have, it is the same that when we talked about this last. I think too many people don't know what to do. That's an education problem. I get that, but it still is a problem. I think what it comes down to, though, is that who has the right of way? Scott talked about, it's he sees it, he recognizes it, so he slows down. Mike said the same thing, a flashing yellow, you slow down, but that doesn't mean that they lost the right of way. They're just being cautious. And I know we're never going to eliminate 100% of the accidents, but I think some of it too is on the pedestrians where they see this beacon and assume traffic is going to stop. But my understanding is if it's not a red light, if it's not a car that they're yielding to, they still have the right of way. Is this rapid flash beacon changing that in any way? So if it isn't, then I struggle with it. While I like it more, having the stop line, well in advance and the additional notification, I think we still have the same problem where we're not telling cars that, hey, there's a pedestrian crossing, you need to stop, because they still believe they have the right of way.
Alderman Meisler, you're correct about that. The pedestrian is required to yield the right of way to the vehicles. The rapid flashing beacons are installed so that it gives the driver visibility and awareness that there is a pedestrian waiting to cross. So I think what Rahat is saying, that the increased standoff by moving another beacon 200 feet away, the biggest problem on Route 31 is the inside-outside lane conflict.
Sure.
We're not experiencing these problems on Route 25 at the rapid flashing beacon sites there because they have visibility in both directions. The overhead mast arm, can you hear me? The overhead mast arm, I think, will give visibility for both the inside and outside lane. You have two conflicts on Route 31. You have the inside lane on the near side of the intersection or the cross, and you have the outside lane conflict as the pedestrian crosses through the crosswalk. So we're trying to eliminate both of those. I think the overhead mast arm with the increased lighting and then the increased standoff by having another beacon 200 yards or feet away would, like Rahat was saying, decrease that triangle where there is lack of visibility of the pedestrians. And I agree, awareness and information is important for the pedestrian. We started a campaign during the summer with pedestrians in the crosswalks. We're going to continue on with bicycles in the crosswalk in the spring because that's a different dynamic entirely. Bicycles move faster than pedestrians, so they're at an increased percentage of danger if they're mounted on the bicycle when they enter the crosswalk. Yeah. So we highly recommend that bicyclists, when they're crossing the crosswalks, they dismount from their bicycles and walk them through.
Okay. Lucy?
Okay, we're talking about safety of all of these options, but we really haven't focused on the road diet. And, every single option has obstacles. But as the chief said, they don't have this problem on Route 25 because there are only 2 lanes. So why aren't we looking more closely at the road diet if everything has obstacles to it? Why isn't that a more logical? I mean, people are crossing all along Route 31, not just at these intersections. They're still crossing at Houston Street, and they're still crossing at other streets down the way. So, I know that it would take some work, but I'm wondering why we're not considering it more seriously if it would be the safest.
I think I would, as the engineer, I would primarily say that during the rush hour, if we have a road diet, you will have hard time getting out of McKee or any other side street.
Could this be analyzed a little more carefully? I mean, do we know that for sure? Are there other routes where we could, since I live in that area, there are other streets that I know that I can take, including Wilson Street and Main Street to get in and out. So there might have to be some sacrifices made, but maybe we need to look at it.
If council wishes to pursue that option, we can. But as I wrote in the memo, that will require us to do a phase 1 preliminary engineering. So we need to hire somebody who do traffic count to all the things that we need to do, and then submit it to IDOT. And as I said, my preliminary discussion with them, they said we are most likely not going to approve it based on your traffic count and number of intersections.
I have heard different traffic count numbers. I don't know. I mean, there are people here that might want to speak. I don't know if there's at a point where we can have.
I'd like to talk about that too, because I think regardless of whether we have 3 lanes or 4 lanes out there, we still need to have higher visibility for whatever type of signal system we have out there. One of the things I wanted to bring up during this discussion was if we're going to have one overhead, I don't know why we don't have one on the other side of the road facing the same way. Just like a railroad
It's gonna be like that. If you remember
Both
this.
sides?
It has
street
both
level,
sides, yep.
will both be flashing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 'cause
I
that's
believe the
one thing.
beacons already do that, the ones that are installed, they
Yeah.
flash on both
Both
sides.
sides.
But
Both
on each
sides?
sides
But
of the.
I had the one
lane,
ahead
yes.
though. So if you had one,
On the
that was-
mast arm is on both sides.
And
It's
the
on both
mast arm
sides.
is on both sides
Yeah.
too?
but I think what he's saying, you have one that's going to be further up, correct? That's proposed?
Those lights are designed in such a way that they flashes on both sides, no matter where you are.
Okay.
But you said you were going to have an additional signal
Right.
about 20 yards forward, correct?
Right, 200.
Would you put another one on the other side of the
Yes,
street?
yes, it is gonna be on both sides.
Okay.
So here you can see that this is the one. So if you're traveling this way, you will see that light here also flashing
Okay.
on both sides.
Because that was the other thing I noticed, I mean, I've thought about other streets around here in Randall Road where they have the, be prepared to stop flashing yellows that are up on Randall. I think that that's something, that we have to think about, is that no matter what width the road is or how we have it laid out, it has to be visible from any lane, either at that crosswalk or before that has to be visible from any lane or any height vehicle that's coming through there. So we don't have the areas where you have those triangles or the blind spots where people can't see what's going on.
I could.
Laura?
Rahad, I just wanted to clarify what I think Alderman Soldati's question was. He wanted to know if the signal prior to the mast arm, the one 200 feet ahead, would that be on both the east and west sides of the road? As opposed to being able to see it from the north and south. I think
Yes.
he wanted it to be on the other side as well. From this.
Oh,
vantage point, we
you mean
can't
on
really-
this side?
On both
Oh.
sides.
Correct. I mean, if we're lighting this baby up like a Christmas tree, let's do it. I mean, that's.
I mean, we can definitely propose that. I mean, if you think that will increase the visibility, yeah, we can ask. I mean, at this point, we are asking for a variance from IDOT, so
Right.
why not?
Well, and that's been the thing in the history of IDOT, the times that we've talked to the state about road diets and when Geneva went in for theirs and how the numbers laid out when they did the studies then. IDOT in history has been really rigid about when they say they're not going to do something, they're not going to allow you to do it, they're not going to do it. And to try to convince them to change it, especially when you're in an entire region that they don't allow something in, it's going to be really hard to get that done. And I don't mind fighting to try to change that. But I also think that if we were to do that, if you look at the traffic counts and having worked out there for 30 years and watched the cars line up completely across the block that I work on at 3 or 4 times a day, it's going to be a traffic nightmare if we go down to 2 lanes.
Alderman Wolf, if
It's
I can make a
3
comment
lanes,
about
though.
that as well. Initially, the police department was open to the concept of the road diet. Obviously, we had concerns when they did it in Geneva, and then it seemed like it worked pretty well, so we thought, well, maybe that could be done here. But obviously, the traffic counts are higher. I don't know what they are, to be quite honest with you. But the thing that changed our minds or our opinions on it was really the road resurfacing project on Route 31 this summer. Really, it was a case study in what a road diet would look like as far as we were concerned. We had it, knocked down to one lane in both directions many times during the day. And to be quite honest with you, they became walls of traffic. And it wasn't just during peak traffic hours. It was at all times of the day. So we had real concerns based on that over most essentially the left turn conflicts that would be created. Basically, you'd have right turn only during those times of day where the traffic were walled off in both the north and south directions. If we think what would happen there from the perspective of behavior of the motoring public is they would move and try to find those alternate routes, and then we would have more traffic in the residential neighborhoods, and that would be an additional concern to us as well. So I guess the road resurfacing project from the police department's and public safety perspective, they kind of turn us off of the idea of the road diet. That's just our perspective.
And to echo that, we have some subdivision where there are like only one street coming out of that subdivision. So if you do a road diet, you will be waiting not hours, but lot of time to make a left out of that intersection, because now during the rush hour, you're seeing traffic going, north and south constantly, and there is no
Route
traffic.
31, there are subdivisions with.
Like if you go south where Brandywine Circle and all that, unless you go through other subdivision, you have only one street coming out of that subdivision. So
Maybe it's not 3 lanes there. Maybe at that point it's 4 lanes. That's pretty far. out of town. So,
So-
you know, I don't know. I mean, I think that it needs to be, if we're going to really decide, I think it needs to be engineered, like you
Right.
said.
Ellen, maybe?
Just,
One more, Mike.
I'm still confused as to, I get the Hawk system. IDOT doesn't approve it, and you're thinking a year or 2 years, they might have come around to it. But Mark made a good point, just a traffic light. For me, I just think a red light and then stops cars. Okay, yellow lights don't stop cars. It's real simple. Regardless of how many lights you have and flashing lights, if they're yellow, not going to stop cars. And to the chief's point, people don't learn.
I think
You
we
can
are-
do all the education, people don't learn. Some do, not all. And we got to keep everyone safe. So I just don't understand why we're so opposed to a red light.
I don't think we are at all opposed to a red light. What we are saying is, yes, that's what ultimately we want, either a Hawks or a traffic signal or something that Alderman just talked about, that we want some kind of a permanent solution to it. But we also understand that it will take time, 2 years, 3 years to get there. What we are proposing is make an intermediate improvement and work towards that.
Okay, thank you.
So, Elliot, if I may, so if I'm kind of ranking where my head is at in terms of, preferences, I see the extension here, the overhead, as something we can do immediate. If I had to prefer the pedestrian activated go to red versus a full intersection, I would. And then my third would be to go option 5, like was suggested in the memo, which is to actually have an intersection. Because if we're serious about talking about this as a safety, then I think that's probably the best chance of getting something immediate and long-term resolved. I don't know, I don't want to have an intersection there because I think we need the traffic throughput. But if it's going to come down to somebody crossing safely, then I would be in favor of putting it there. But I think if we can get the pedestrian one, that would be better.
I'd like to chime in on that because I think
Yeah.
even if we have a red light there, people still get hit at those intersections.
Sure.
I mean,
We're
and
never
that's
gonna
the thing
eliminate
that
100%.
still infuriates me is that our motoring public doesn't pay attention to people that are walking or on bikes, and they keep getting hit. And the distracted drivers are the biggest problem, and we can't legislate against that. We can do different things. We can try and enforce everything we have, but we can't legislate against that.
No.
And that's, I think, the problem that frustrates most of us that sit up here.
Scott? And I don't know this, and I'm not a huge road diet proponent. But and maybe, Chief, maybe you could answer this, or someone, would it make sense to have a road diet from McKee, maybe just before McKee, to the north, through up to Wilson, or maybe to Main Street? And so you have a road diet downtown, in downtown proper.
Well, we've had success with that on Wilson Street.
So use the mic.
We've had success with that on Wilson Street and Houston Street. It's not exactly the same, but it worked.
I know there would need to be more that I have to look at, but
There are people here that would like to speak. Are we going to give them an
Right.
opportunity?
As soon as we get done discussing among ourselves, we'll have public input time. Mark?
So a couple things on the road diet. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I said, if you look at what Geneva did, I mean, it still is, when it's in Geneva, it's still 2 lanes in each direction when you get to near the train station. I mean, it's only 1 lane in very minimal section of 31. Today, for me, pulling out of my driveway, it took close to 3 minutes for me to pull on my driveway. It's raining, and it wasn't a road diet, but just because of the timing of the lights and everything, I was sitting there for a long time. That's going to happen to everybody on every street, not just me on my driveway. So it is, I can see that being really bad if we're in that situation. And I'm not just, like I said, people coming out of their streets. I mean, my driveway is, I'm one of like 20 along there.
Lucy?
I get my feeling is, and I've heard this from others, that those lanes are so narrow that it's not really used as a 4-lane highway. I mean, it's often people, they're not riding right next to each other.
I do it every day.
Yes.
I drive it
Well,
multiple
you-
times a
you
day
may-
in many different vehicles.
You may, but others don't. It's a narrow highway.
Right. And
It
depending on what I'm
is.
driving depends on which lane I'm in.
Well, right, but, I mean, that's part of the issue.
Okay. If nobody else has anything, I'll invite the public to come up if you have any comments, because I see hands waving back there today.
Hello, Jerry Lamont, Hamlet Street. My comment is, I think the red light, option number one, the Hawk system is best because cars are going to stop at the red light. This is a Hawk system. It is programmed to be solid yellow. So instead of being default off, just program it so it's default yellow all the time. Pedestrian presses it, it goes to red. It seems like that's the best option because when it's red, cars stop. Flashing yellow, cars slow down maybe. But yeah, it's a programmable system. Just have it be yellow solid all the time. This way, people know it. You're at an intersection. Be cautious. Press the button. It turns red. Hopefully, they stop and the pedestrian goes. So that's my comment.
Anybody else from the public want to speak? I saw more hands.
Hold on, here they come.
You want to come up?
Hey, everybody. Matt with the Bicycle Commission, Matt Knowles. I think, we've kind of beaten this down a little bit, and the nice thing about it is we're really going through it all. As the Bike Commission, we look at it as our first option is still the road diet. And as somebody who lives on the west side of town and has to ride McKee to get anywhere in this town, I have the option to take North Illinois, any one of those, and I don't because, I take McKee and I take a right. If I'm going to go left, I go out of my neighborhood on the back way and I go up to Fabian and I take a left if I'm going that way out of town. I don't take a left on McKee from McKee onto 31 because over the 7 years I've lived here or 9 years I've lived here, I'm conditioned to know how long it's going to take me to take a left on there, whether it's 4 lane or 2 lanes. I mean, it's just you condition yourself over time that's just what you do. And I had to sit there and think about this. We're arguing about this road diet over assumptions. We don't really know. We haven't done the research. We don't know how many people take a left out of Illinois during traffic, during rush hour, how many people take a left off of McKee during rush hour. What we know is it could be kind of a pain, although I've lived there for 9 years and I never take a left on McKee any time, other time than like between 11 and 1. And so as we look at it, we have to really take our time to know how nice a road diet would be on that street and get the facts of whether or not that's going to work or not. So we don't make assumptions on whether or not it'd be possible that it might be a pain to take a left out of there during 5 o'clock, but how many people are actually going to do that to begin with? And so, we can all talk about it, but until we actually know how many people do that and how many people are going to be affected by it, as opposed to how much easier and safer it will be to cross the street on all of those streets. All 18 of those intersections will be easier to cross if there's 2 lanes to cross than 4. So, that has always been our number one, and then number 2 would be Hawk, and then, in the long term and in the short term, I totally think we should do everything that he's talking about as far as, that's we can do immediately today. But we should be very serious about looking at a road diet and come up with the answers that we know are the facts before we just dismiss it off assumptions. So, thanks.
Hi, everyone. Abby Beck. I just had a quick piece of information to add to the discussion, just because I've done a little bit of the research on it. And on IDOT's website, I was looking at the traffic counts for 2016, and from Fabian to Wilson on 31 is 13,100 cars, and then as you go south, it's 13,900. And the Federal Highway Administration says that roads are good candidates for road diets as long as they are under 20,000. So we are well underneath 20,000. I don't know what it was in Geneva before they put the road diet in. In Geneva, they do have about 9,500, their road count, or their car count, daily traffic count currently. So in terms of discussing facts, because I am a big proponent of the road diet, I just wanted to throw that one out there because we talk about traffic counts. And will there be capacity loss? Probably. Will there be safety improvements for pedestrians and bikers? Yes, and I think that's a worthy compromise.
Real quick, before you leave, you said that was a federal standard was 20,000?
Federal Highway
You know what
Administration.
IDOT standard is? Do they have that listed on their website when you were in there?
I didn't see it there listed.
Because
No.
it seems to me when the Geneva one was done, they were just below what IDOT used the numbers for, and we were just over it.
Oh, really?
That was what the deal was, is because we had talked to them when Geneva was doing it and asked if we were a candidate, and they said no, because Geneva was less than the Illinois cutoff, and we were above the cutoff. And that's why they said, don't bother trying to do it, because we're not going to drop, or we're not going to raise our standard to allow you to do that. That's my memory of it.
Interesting.
That's why
I will look into it.
So I guess at this point, we want to decide what we want to do next. I'd like to see us go with what staff has presented, because I think it's a step forward until we either research and decide that a road diet is something we want to go after, although I still think we're crossing the same amount curb to curb isn't going to change. It's just going to change the pattern. So I don't know how that becomes safer if you take the same amount of cars going down the road, but put them all in one lane.
You don't have blind spots. That makes it a lot safer.
Lucy, you gotta use the mic.
You don't have the blind spots. So that's what makes it safer.
I think, like Rahat said, if we were to pursue a road diet, let's say, for instance, we had the numbers and we could do that. I think what Rahat's saying is it would be years to get them to make that happen.
We don't know, but it's worthy of going forward and looking into it.
Sure, but for expediency's sake, and for the sake of kids trying to get across the road, and the fact that the near-term solution to be to get more lights up there, and light up the McKee intersection, which is dark. I would be all in for that. Now, I'd love to even see some additional signage, on the 200-foot out signs that have, some clear wayfinding on there in terms of, pedestrian crossing ahead or something like that. But, I think because we can do it and we can do it rather quickly, we need to at least pursue that.
Sure, but we should also come up with a plan of how we want to move forward. That's just a Band-Aid as far as I can tell.
That's fine, I just don't want to bleed out.
Mark?
I would say we do what we can do without getting all kinds of additional approvals first. We look into a regular traffic light. I'm not saying a fully undersized intersection there because of the fact that it's in multiple places around town. Let's look at, I want to push a button and actually go green, yellow, red. Everybody gets that. And we can look at we can ask about a road diet and see where we're at. But that is the order of operations I would go in.
Yeah,
Elliot?
I agree. I would like to see us do something. We talked about this obviously months ago. Here we are, still talking about it, and it's the same as it was when we had the concern initially. So if we know we're not going to get anything back from IDOT about a traffic study, a road diet, an intersection, or any type of pedestrian crossing, okay, let's try to set a timetable to come back to that and put it on the agenda in however much time we think it's going to take. But if we know there's something we can do immediately to assist it, then let's look to do that as well.
Mike?
Well, I agree. And so I would say, keep people safe today, but we should start, and I'm not opposed to a road diet. I think that would be a good thing. I just didn't think we could do it, but it's something to explore and start looking into.
Dave, did you have something?
Just one couple questions. Your proposed fixed rot, have you put a dollar amount to that yet?
We have an estimate that for all 3 intersections, it's about $500,000, but that's an estimate at this time because we haven't done a lot of research. It's based on how much it did cost only for one pole with one pedestrian indication in it.
So I guess that leads to my next point, that this really isn't a quick fix because we'd have to put this in the next year's budget or maybe the year after that's budget and come up with the money to do it.
We have included this in next year's budget.
Right, but there aren't enough funds.
Okay.
So this is just the upgrade for the overhead lights?
For 3 intersections.
For 3 intersections, it's 500 grand. Okay.
That's one question I had.
The next question I guess I have is, I know it's listed in here with everything that there is IDOT approval that we need to get for that. At some point too, I'd kind of like to have a representative from IDOT come to one of our meetings so we can ask the questions and we can put some pressure on them here in this room. So I don't know what it takes for staff to try to set that up, but that's something that I would like to see. We talk about it all the time that, we don't know what KDOT or IDOT or anybody else is going to approve. Well, I think back to when we talked about things with the dam, we had the DNR here, we had the Army Corps of Engineer here, and we could ask them questions. And if they didn't answer, they could get us the answers, but they were here in front of us. And you have a lot different comfort level after you've asked the director, or whoever we need to have here, ask them a question and get an answer from them.
My sense is the culture's changing. I know that when we've been down to Springfield, they've acknowledged being more open to walkability issues and infrastructure and that sort of thing. So maybe things that we found out before, they may have a new take on it. So I think that's a great idea.
They still don't want to pay for it, but they might approve something.
Well, and we don't have the costs. We don't know what things cost. So we need to look at that also, I think, before we ask for people to pay for things.
Okay. So, does anybody want to make a motion on staff's recommendation or make their own motion on whatever they want? I'd prefer what staff has suggested.
I think we're looking for more information before we make a motion, right? The costs.
Is there a motion that we need to make? It's a discussion, right?
Right.
No, actually, we were asking, when we came here in July, we presented the options, and the direction that was given to staff was to meet internally and come up with a specific recommendation that put forth one or more of those options as the one that staff recommends.
So, let's put it this way. So if we made a motion for staff to move forward with the overhead mast and all that stuff, with the direction to investigate further into a road diet. The fact of the matter is, we would want to have something in place anyway, even if we have a road diet.
Right.
So there's no sense in not doing this right now. So, I guess, I would make the motion of let's proceed, with option 2, which is staff's preferred option, correct? With the directive to also do a study on the road diet and to take a look at that. So we can get some definitive answers as to what that might be. I know the chief said we had a live test this summer, but the fact of the matter is we do need to look.
I think those are two separate things because, like you say, I think we need the light improvements or whatever we're going to have there. And if we get the approval from IDOT, then we have to figure out how much that's going to cost and then how we can fund it. So I think that's the steps I see with that. As far as the road diet goes, I think that has to be separate because I think staff is going to have to figure out what all the hoops they're going to have to jump through, what studies we're going to have to pay for, what things we're going to be required to do to be able to even ask for that. And again, I think there's going to be dollar figures attached to all of that we have to figure out. Is that something we want to pay for?
Right. And the bottom line is we need direction out there now, though.
So you made a motion already. Do we have a second?
Well, he didn't make a motion.
Motion is to pursue option 2, which is the staff's.
Pursue it as far, I got to get some clarification before I can vote on this. Pursue staff getting further doing a further cost analysis of what it's actually going to cost. I mean, Rahad's already told us he thinks it's going to cost roughly $500,000. So are we saying we want them to continue to pursue this and entertain putting this into next year's budget that we're going to have to sit and argue over?
Yes.
Like, what if, I don't know. But what if we tried paring that down a bit, where we know Union Street and Morton Street aren't the danger zones, but McKee is? We just put one in on McKee and not the 3 of them. I mean, if it's...
I think staff would recommend against that. You have the same conflict issues of inside-outside lane at those other 2.
On each one.
And I think
I agree with
more
that.
confusion.
And I think that, yeah, you're right. You don't want to create more confusion by having one different than the other 2 that are on the road. And there's more traffic south of Wilson than there is north of Wilson.
Scott, I'd ask that instead of giving definitive direction for staff to pursue this, that you consider amending your motion, that we add it to the budget discussion.
Okay. I will amend that. I will amend my motion to discuss that in budget so we can argue about it.
Can I ask?
I just don't want them to spend time and money doing something that we need to have the discussion on financial.
Sure. We have to pay for it.
What kind of time or money are we going to spend if we ask for IDOT approval to do that? Because I know that requires IDOT approval on a state route for those lights.
Initially, we'll probably have to hire a consultant who is more experienced in designing all this. So we are gonna bring it to you if it is more than $20,000, and you will have a chance to approve that consultant contract. And then we are gonna meet with the IDOT and propose what you guys just talked about. And if they say, yeah, it looks good, and then we are gonna proceed with the design and ultimately to construction. But every step of the way, you will be presented with those contracts to approve or not to approve, to go forward or not.
So I guess we would need to have the motion read to gather all the costs so we can discuss it at budget, correct? Yes?
I mean, I think we're comfortable enough with the value for a budget number so that council can discuss it as part of the 2018 budget. You're looking roughly in the $500,000 range. Whether it turns out to be $425,000 or $530,000 really is kind of beyond.
Sure.
From a budgeting standpoint, from your guys' perspective for 2018, you need to be thinking in that ballpark.
Okay.
Do you, if we were to have a road diet, do you think the existing lights out there would be satisfactory? They seem.
No.
No, so why aren't there lights on Route 25 that are working pretty effectively?
Right, but they're only crossing 2 lanes.
Well, okay, so we'd have 3 lanes. So we think that going from 4 to 3 lanes, we'd still need this sort of a setup.
Yes, I believe that we do.
All right.
And
The traffic counts are higher on 31.
The higher traffic counts, unfortunately, the speed that is on
Well, that's another thing we should probably address. but
31
yes.
versus 25, I mean, that's the reality of what the road is.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Well-
to also comment on your question. We have the highest level of confidence that IDOT might approve something like you see on the screen is in the shortest period of time.
Okay.
Okay, so not doing that may lead to no improvements for those 2 or 3 years until IDOT were to ultimately approve a road diet.
Right.
Now, just the 2 signals for a road diet might work, but then you still have that, we're struggling with that 3-year period or 2-year period in the middle.
Okay. Well, 500,000 is a lot. And just a quick Google, it looks like a road diet is between $100,000 and $150,000 a mile. And we don't have a lot of miles going through town, not including engineering. So road diets are not that expensive. They're a low-cost alternative.
It's about time, though, I think, too. I mean, that's, and to Gary's point, what is what is the quickest way through IDOT to get a higher level of safety for the pedestrians trying to cross that route?
Anybody else?
I guess the only thing I hate is, okay, $500,000 to do 3 intersections or 3 crossings. And then we're also going to investigate a traffic signal of some sort. And I thought I heard that's $300,000 before. So we do all this and we're talking 3 years down the road, we spend $1 million to do all 3, because that's really what we're looking at here is, are we going to do all 3 or not? I mean, because we're starting off, let's spend $500,000. We're talking about this in budget. Spend $500,000 to fix 3 intersections. And let's look at changing to Hawk system or a, green, yellow, red. And that's $300,000 or so, right? Isn't that what I heard you guys say before? For all 3 or each?
For each.
For each. Okay, so now we're at $900,000 to do 3 more. So that's $1.4 million. And then a road diet at, let's round up because there's more than just 150,000, so let's say $200,000 a mile. And now we just spent, another $400,000. So we're at $1.5 million. So at some point we have to stop saying, let's keep re-engineering this and pick a final solution.
People can cross at the traffic light.
I crossed
We
my
already
driveway,
have.
I said that already. I haven't gotten hit yet.
And one thing I'd like to point out is there's only one that IDOT would approve at this point.
True.
It's going to be a time thing. Everything else we've talked about, other suggestions, road diet, pedestrian activated signals, all worthy things to consider. But I think what I'm hearing is correct. The reality of those is they are way down the road or never, depending on where IDOT gets to. So we have an option that is likely to be approved that, from everything I'm hearing, sounds like it is an improvement. It'll make things safer. And we can, argue about the money or not. And I would support putting it, bringing it back, putting it in the budget. We can discuss it. But it's going to be a philosophical discussion at some point, whether we're all comfortable sitting here saying, we don't want to spend the money to make an incremental improvement because there's a possibility we can get the ultimate improvement at some undetermined point down the road, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So will we be comfortable with the status quo for that period of time, or do we need to do something sooner? And I think we should put it in the budget and talk about it, because I think there's something to do there.
Dave?
Peggy, I think this question goes toward you. I'm not quite sure how you would do what you were just asked to do, because normally you would try to present to us a balanced budget. So unless you've got $500 and some thousand laying in your back pocket someplace, I'm not sure how you could present a balanced budget to us, including this in it.
Well, this is in the budget, but it is in the capital fund, and the capital fund will show a negative cash flow balance at the end of the year with this in it. The general fund reserves would cover it until the following year.
Okay. Your Honor?
Yeah, I haven't said anything tonight because I've been sitting here listening to this conversation. I have had the opportunity, I think now 3 times, to talk about this varied issue with the State Transportation Secretary one-on-one. And, I think he's sympathetic toward the idea, but what you have to appreciate is he tells me, this is an issue that extends to him far beyond the city of Batavia. And this is a repeated request that he gets from Cairo to South Beloit. And there's many towns that have this same issue going on. So the IDOT has formed a special, called engineering committee to review this whole idea of these, whatever we want to call them. There's different names in different parts of the state for it. They tell me that the big problem with these is that they're finding that the potential user of this many times would be younger children. And many of them would have the tendency to think this is some kind of an elevator, and I'll just go ahead and push this button, and the minute I push that button, that light goes red, and then I just charge right across the street. And they said one of the things that they think they're going to have to do when and if they ever approve this is this thing is going to have to go into some kind of a cycled situation where you hit that button and it probably goes to yellow, flashing yellow for 10 seconds or 15 seconds or whatever. Then it goes to red. Then it may give you X number of seconds to cross that road, and then it goes back to red. I don't want to be quoted about the Geneva road diet because that's another whole story. It's not my town. I've heard things about it at higher levels, and I'm not going to repeat what I heard. But I would encourage you, if you really want to ask yourself some questions, go up to Geneva and write it and count how many blocks it really is. It is not a total road diet from Fabian Parkway to 3rd Street. It's something much less than that. And there were some major issues up there with Houghton Mifflin's entrance coming into that thing to the degree that they couldn't even begin to create it till they get north of Houghton Mifflin. And then they had to stop it before they got to 3rd Street.
And now they just added 40 more housing units at the south end of it. So we'll see how that works. Too soon?
Don't start.
So what are you going to do with it, Alan? You going to let it go to,
I think we let it go to budget and discuss this there because I think if we don't figure out how to pay for it, it doesn't matter whether we get approval on it. I don't know if that's where we want to leave it, or do we want to try to get IDOT approval on it and then fund it? I still think regardless of what we do with the road, whether we leave Route 31 as it is, or we shrink it down in a road diet, or do anything different with it, I still think if we're going to have some type of pedestrian activated signal to get across the road, it has to be more obnoxious than it is now, so people will pay attention to it and adhere to it. I mean, I think it's better. I personally think it's better. I've watched it. I used to listen for the noise. Now I just go out and look and see when I see them flashing as I'm walking across the lot, because I see it on a daily basis, and I drive through them all the time, probably more than I used to, because I want to see how they function and I want to see how people use them.
I agree, and just I've seen too many kids almost get hit, and we, to the mayor's point, they're gonna hit it and go, right? And so we need to make this thing absolutely as obnoxious as possible. Seriously, to grab people's attention. I do, and I know it's $500,000, and I know it's going to be a fist fight in the budget meeting, and that's fine. I'm willing to dig in on that. But the fact of the matter is, I've seen too many kids almost get hit. I know a kid that did get hit, and I can't put a price tag on that.
Dave?
one last question, I guess, of the chief. It sounded like I heard you say you wouldn't support a road diet for the reasons you stated necessarily, but you would support the option that Rahat is recommending.
What I would say is I think that a road diet could potentially increase safety for pedestrians crossing the street. I don't know that it'll increase overall safety of the motoring public. We have to take that into consideration as well. And again, these are my perspectives based on my experience.
Thanks.
Do we need to act on my motion, or do I need to rescind it, or what do we need to do?
You needed to amend it. He suggested that you amend it.
I did amend it.
Yeah, you amended it to just have the discussion at the
Yes.
at the budget time. Okay, did we get a second on that?
Second.
Mike?
Now, just refresh my memory, are we going to ask staff to pursue?
They've done the work. Basically, the motion is for us to discuss this at.
To add it to the budget discussion.
To add to the budget.
Okay.
Yeah. Which it already is.
To the budget discussion.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I suppose we better do. Alan,
Who
you
was
gonna do
second?
all in favor?
I'd say roll
Mike's doing
call.
second. Okay, once a roll call on that.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Rosato,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Salate,
Aye.
Meitzler,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Uher,
Aye.
Atack,
Aye.
McFadden,
Aye.
Brown.
Sure.
Is that one of our options?
He's already rolling up his sleeves.
All right. Item number 9, discussion on the potential realignment of the bike path at the wastewater treatment plant. Alderman Wolf.
Thank you. I get all the fun ones. I'll just let Gary start this
Can
one.
I just say something before we get started on this? Scott and his team, they've been here all night. You know, they come here Scott's here just to support, to answer any questions, but I know this came up in previous meetings that we try to get these guys in first because they work all day, and I appreciate you guys sticking around, but maybe we can just keep that, staff can keep that in the back of their minds that, you know, and we're talking about wastewater treatment. I mean, these guys have been at it all day, and that we can get them on the agenda first and
He's
let
going to
them
send
know.
us a bill for it, don't we?
That's my fear.
Alderman, we kind of knew that these last two items were going to take a considerable amount of time, so I think the thought was to get some of the quick items done first tonight, and then,
They went real quick.
well, no, I mean, we knew the Batavia Avenue crossing and the one we're about ready to talk about probably are the two that are going to be covered the most tonight.
I'll
Want me to
let
jump
you
in?
go right ahead, Gary.
This was another one from this past summer. If you recall, we even went out there. I think it was one of maybe our first walk-arounds in the downtown this past summer. Staff, out of those meetings this summer, we were directed to examine options for relocating the bike path. We retained Trotter and Associates. We went through council and got a contract approved with Trotter and Associates to look at various options for realigning or redirecting the bike path coming in from the south end of town through the treatment plant, around the treatment plant. So Trotter worked with us at the staff level. We developed options. Then we subsequently met with the bike commission. We met at the staff level, met with the bike commission members, and actually about 6, almost maybe even 8 weeks ago now, we were ready to come to council, but council has been dealing with other larger issues over the last several months here, so we knew that these were going to take some time to discuss, so we did not want to put this on an agenda with one of the larger issues. So we finally got an evening tonight where we can bring this forward. I'm going to take a moment to step aside. I'll introduce Susan Novak. Susan is from Trotter and Associates. She's the engineer who developed and oversaw this project and then worked with the group to talk through the different options. I'll let her make her presentation and then we can come back.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right.
You need to use the mic so that it gets on the tape and on the TV broadcast.
See, I was told not to stand behind the podium. At least that's what they said in
You
school.
can take the mic and hold it if you want.
I'm a project engineer at Trotter and Associates. I specialize in civil design, watershed management, and regulatory. I'm kind of going to go over some of the project history for the Fox River bike path, some of the design considerations and the site constraints that we looked into for the conceptual designs that are here in front of you today. Ooh, it didn't like me. The Phase 1 rehabilitation of the wastewater treatment plant required the reconstruction of the main building. As part of this project, staff had requested us to reconstruct Flynn Street. This required the relocation of a lot of utilities, including electric, fiber optic, sanitary, and water. It's also utilized as a primary access for the food pantry, which, as part of the reconstruction, staff requested that we provided additional parking for their use. It's also the current location of the bike path link that connects Shumway and Quarry Park. The current concept took all of these items into consideration, and in the spring of this year, staff requested us to look at alternatives that would route the bike path around this already congested area. So we looked at the existing site constraints as well as the future expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. Currently, there are 2 proposed expansions in addition to the one that's under construction now for the site. Phase 1, or Phase 2, and Phase 3. The four concepts in front of you today evaluated the site and the future of the site of the wastewater treatment plant. It also looked at the regulatory requirement required for each of the concept designs and developed probable costs for construction. The first concept we looked at is the Riverfront Alignment that's generally located along the wastewater treatment plant property. This path requires significant retaining walls along the west bank of the Fox River and will be constructed within the floodplain. The path is considered to be constructed above the 100-year floodplain event, which subsequently protects the wastewater treatment plant site. And it takes the path away from other traveled ways and is a candidate for grant funding. You can see in this alignment there's some colors, and those are allocated to different sections for the structural retaining wall that's estimated to be required. These significant improvements are similar to other river walks in the Fox Valley area. The regulatory requirements for this design is significant and would require a lengthy permitting process with Army Corps, IEPA water quality, and IDNR. Concept 2 considers an alternate bike path along the riverfront of the Fox River, but expects to cross the river at the south side of the plant near Quarry Park. It would have a single span bridge that crosses near the baseball diamond of the Park District and have an on-grade asphalt path that would connect to the existing three-bridge system that crosses the Fox River to the north that Trotter and Associates designed with the Park District. Concept 3 completely realigns the bike path. It considers existing right-of-way and property owned by the bike path and realigns it to connect the south point of the bike path near Quarry Park and the north point at Houston and Water Street. The existing railroad, the old railroad right-of-way that is currently owned by the City of Batavia would be utilized to realign part of the bike path between Union Avenue and Water Street. This would require some small retaining wall construction along this stretch. Then it would utilize Water Street to connect to the existing intersection at Houston. This may impact some of the parking along this road. Concept 4 is the current alignment. It maintains the established route and requires a small portion of shared road along Flynn and Shumway. These are the four concepts in front of you today. The costs vary between all three of them, and staff will be providing their recommendation shortly. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you for your time tonight.
So one of the slight alternatives on option 4.2, which was discussed at least through the process, was to utilize basically the front yard of the new admin building and the wastewater treatment plant, eliminate the parking. I'll try and go back a slide if I can. So eliminate that parking that you see on the north side of our proposed building, which would be, I think, 8 spaces, 9 spaces, and utilize that front yard area much in the same manner it is today for the path, keeping that path off of Flynn Street and bringing it over to Shumway. So I say in my memo that we met with Bike Commission members, met at the staff level, and went through these options. Options number 2, which was the bridge, I guess I maybe don't need to go back, but option number 2, which is the bridge, we subsequently recommended against due to the impacts to the Park District, and that you would now be taking all that regional trail traffic right adjacent to their ball field down there. And frankly, you also have to cross, this is a little confusing that you're crossing the river and then you're crossing back over the river. And Clark Island, as we all know, is subject to flooding during large storm events. So you're basically cutting off that path, forcing all the traffic on the east side of the river south of the treatment plant. So then they may not have a way to go back on the west side of the river because those could very well be flooded over during strong storm events. So we ultimately eliminated option number 2. We're recommending to eliminate option number 2 for those reasons. Then option number three, we originally, as staff, were open to this concept and pretty supportive of this concept, with the idea being we already own the right-of-way. Seemed to be a fairly straight direction up to Water Street. And then the character of riding bikes on Water Street going north is not much different than the character of riding bikes on Shumway and Island. There was some concerns about the intersection of Water and First and Water and Wilson. So those were definitely concerns that ruled against this option. And then I think one of the biggest things that also changed the tide against this option was the concerns from the private business owners who were seeing cut-through traffic next to the Parmarco building there. They were seeing that traffic this summer and experienced more than one minor collision, I'll term it, between bikers and vehicles in that private parking lot. And so while this officially routes the bikers around that private parking lot, I think the reality is that we found people didn't want to go up the hill on Union, and they probably certainly wouldn't want to go up this hill where if they could just stay down in the private parking lot. So you're actually kind of directing people probably more attractively through the private parking lot with this option. So in the end, we kind of hemmed and hawed and realized that this probably wasn't the best of options, so we recommended against option 3 as well. So that left options 1 and 4. I stated in my memo, and if you have questions on the ITEP process, Rahat may be able to help us as well. Option number 1, go back to that. Option number 1, of course, was the route that was identified by council during our field walk, and a lot of people questioned, why would it be so difficult to construct? I think when you start to do the engineering and you start to take into account the regulatory issues and the wetland issues and the floodplain issues and the slope issues and the stabilization issues and the future construction issues, that it gets a lot more complicated than maybe you might realize. And if you do want to pursue funding for this, you would have to build it to certain standards, which again leads to increased construction complications due to the widths that would be required. But staff is still open to this concept. We understand the aesthetic appeal that it may have, that the council certainly identified when we were out there walking. But of course, there comes with a very big price tag. Even at half of this cost of what's estimated, we take half of the cost, and then we take our local 20% share of that. You're still at several $100,000 just for the city's portion of the project. And then, of course, if it ends up being closer to the cost estimate, you could be close to a $7-figure dollar for the city to construct this option. So it is a beautiful improvement. It's also a very expensive improvement, which leads us to concept number 4. I know that there's always been concern about this notion of, now we're sending bikers onto Flint Street and the conflicts between Flint Street and vehicles backing into Flint Street. I've said from the beginning, and I will certainly have public comment tonight, others will disagree with me, I don't see the conflicts of the parked cars as being that much different than the conflicts which exist on Houston Street or exist on Island. During the weekends when the trail will see a large percentage of users, we won't have any traffic in front of our building, those parking spaces will be empty. I just don't see the conflicts with Flint Street or the hazards associated with Flint Street that other people do. Is it ideal? Is this the best thing? Again, I think there may be another better option, but that other better option also comes with a very steep price tag. And with the city having other priorities, I'm not sure that that's the best route for the city to take when this option has already been accounted for in our project and is essentially a no-cost option. One thing we did talk about, and I think we should compel any future developer of this property here to grant an easement, to dedicate an easement to a right-of-way as part of their project. We could take the path and route it like my mouse is doing there up on the screen. That puts it on private property, but again, if we could compel a future developer to do that, that would address the issue of Flint Street being a hazard. They would get the path out of the parking areas and again get you over to the Shumway path and head north up Shumway. So I think that's always still in our back pocket at some point in the future if the city would just accept option number 4 as the permanent option. And that is our recommendation, is to move forward with option 4. And then if the council desires, we certainly can explore the possibility of ITEP grant funding for option number 1. I'll stop right there.
You want to take this? You want me to take it?
You can take it. I don't.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we were to take the parking off the front there, you got 8 spaces up there. Can you relocate those where the bike path would be along that driveway that runs parallel to the river, down at the bottom of the screen?
Well, part of...
Just as a curiosity, I mean, is there enough room there? Is there a way to do that, or does that not work with that
It doesn't
driveway?
really work, because the part of the notion of those spaces too was to service the food pantry.
Oh,
And now
okay.
you're quitting those spaces, you'd be moving
That
the
for-
spaces
okay.
behind the gate. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask.
There, and as I think most of you know, the food pantry use down there really probably doesn't have a lot of enough parking to begin with. I believe that they use the generosity of the adjacent property owner to allow themselves to park.
That's what I've noticed as I've gone down to just to see how the construction has been going on down there. I've noticed how the parking is laid out down there, where it usually is at.
So we really pressed to get as many spaces as we could for that reason.
I'm a kind of go back to something I said earlier this year about creating a vision, an overall vision for what we want our river to look like. And from Fabian Parkway all the way down to the south end of the river where our border is. And to have, and I'm looking at option 1. I know it's expensive. It does some other things too. It stabilizes that shoreline there, right? It will protect actually the wastewater plant.
Yes.
We have the ability to pursue funds, not that we would get them, but that's something we can pursue. But I look at our riverway. This is a jewel that we have running through our town. It absolutely is. And I think it's up to us to, as opposed to just attack one thing at a time, we'll have to phase things, but to create a vision for the entire waterway for, from Fabian down to the depot pond, to the dam, down to, the bike paths all the way down. And they're not just bike paths. This is a pedestrian throughway. There is a lot of things that could happen if you have throughways on both sides of the river. I think it could be an amazing thing for our community. But it takes some vision and some guts and the ability to try and source some funds. Yeah, it's not going to be cheap. I seem to have the wallet open tonight, so apologize. But it's going to take some vision to do it. And I look at, we could run the trail behind the waste treatment again, and we can do that temporarily. That's fine. But I think we need to develop that vision, and we need to attack it, and we need to create something that we want to hang our hats on. We're so proud of our Riverwalk. Why not extend it? Why not? What's stopping for us from doing that and having an amazing experience on our river?
I think I agree with Scott on this one, and I also look at this as an opportunity because we are seeing a tremendous amount of erosion on our riverbanks now. And the cost is going to be on us to protect our riverbanks. But because this one could be possibly subject to some grants because of the... Someday, because of the pedestrian and mitigation and all this kind of stuff that you guys all talk about all the time. There's an opportunity here that we could get somebody to help us protect our banks. So even though, we'd have to be responsible for the 20%, the vision, the riverbank preservation, the bicycle, pedestrian-friendly thing, I think it's worthwhile pursuing. Mike, you got anything? We'll go around the table here.
Thank you.
Well, we started there. You had your chance.
Hey, quiet down. A bit. Hey, I would agree with that also. I think vision is a big thing, and thank you for your comments on that, Scott. Sometimes, vision costs. But, and to Dave's point, we've been talking about riverbank restoration and how expensive it is, and it's something we have to do. And this will just be just part of doing it. It's just, put that onto Riverbank Restoration also. I just think it's a thing to do. I think we have a beautiful city in our downtown, and the river is a jewel running through our downtown. And until a few years ago, no one knew there was a river running through Batavia. And so I think we need to take the river back and give it to the people of Batavia. So I would agree with that.
Elliot?
You're not going to hear me argue about the need for the vision up and down the river. I absolutely agree with that. I think we've said that multiple times this year. I definitely support the idea of the aesthetics that option gives, and I would love to see that be the case. I'm very nervous, though, again, going back to what I said earlier tonight, to commit to something in the 7 figures knowing that the state is going to be a challenge for us going forward. So I would definitely like to see the grant pursued to see how much we can actually get towards that end. I would encourage this option, 4 option, removing the parking space in the time being. But yeah, I would love to see that option 1 become reality on the river.
Tony?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. Option 1, I wish we could afford it today. But being realistic and the possibility of getting grant money, I think, is very inviting. The idea that we have option 4, we're not gonna make a big investment and then turn around and lose a vision. I totally agree with you, Scott. I would love to see that, and things don't come to be unless you have the vision. And so I think going with option 4 is kind of a no-brainer at this point, since we can't afford it, but we're not putting money out that we would have to give up if we did get some grant money and could do it. So I would love to see it in the future. Sooner the better.
Mark?
Yeah, Scott, thank you for your comments. That's one of the reasons I love this minimum wage job, is to hear things like that, and it kind of changes my perception on things. I've said it before with other things. I'm not a huge fan of grants or taxpayer things that I think those kind of things need to kind of go away in our society, because of the fact that the state, the government, everybody is broke. And so I struggle with that. I struggle with, it's not our money, it's somebody else's money. Well, it is our money. And somebody building a bridge to nowhere was our money. And so I struggle with that. But I wouldn't want to look at it again. There's got to be a vision. I wouldn't say do one thing because we don't have a vision. If we had this vision all the way up and down the river and we had a total dollar figure in mind, I'd be much more willing to support that, knowing that we have the entire thing laid out, rather than just like, okay, let's do this. And then the next thing, we can't get a grant for that, so now we don't do anything else. I don't want to piecemeal this. I'd rather put it all together. So I wouldn't do anything right now. I would do option 4 or 4A or whatever you want to call it, and figure it all out later.
True.
No, I'll be quick. Scott, thank you. Dave, you guys summed up my thoughts pretty much 100%. So,
Mary, you want to jump in now?
I think everybody in the council's done a really yeoman's job here tonight to identify the issues and what we should be striving for. And I fully support the idea that we should try to do idea number 1. When the day comes that we do it, we need to keep it idea alive and well and in the plan, and that should be the goal we have. This morning, I was in at the 8th floor Willis Tower for most of the day, and the reason I'm sitting here kind of gulping as we talk about this is that this morning, I've been part of it, so I knew it was coming, representing the locals, but the federal government has just come in and rewrote the entire grant process as it applies to transportation. And there's a lot of new ways that they didn't do it before that are now going to be put into place, such things as if you make an application and we give it to you, you better be prepared to do it. And there's been a lot of money that's been left on the table in the region, and millions of dollars, and they're saying this has got to stop, and there's new ways that they calculate formulas for who is going to get awarded. So the old days are over. This morning I heard somebody make the joke that we raised a whole generation of society in this country that, starting back in the Great Society days, I guess of Lyndon Johnson, that if you wanted something, all you had to do was write a grant and take it to Washington or Springfield, and they would give you the money. And in large degree, apparently, this worked for a number of years. And that may, some people suggested today, that may be why we're in the mess we are now, because we've got so much debt for all these grants that we've given everybody and for all kinds of ideas. So right now, we are in a changing time, and the idea of getting big grants, I think, are going to be slow going for a while until the region figures out how this all happens, and state and Washington and Springfield maybe take on different ideas and different attitudes. So I wouldn't think that it's realistic to think that we're going to accomplish any of this in the next few years. I would hope we would keep it as a goal. I think it's a great idea. I appreciate the Bicycle Commission coming down and helping to sell it to us. And I appreciate what Trotter did in trying to design it in a professional manner so that it would be something that would work when we are able to do it. I would note that I think if we go for a grant, and I would encourage us to try to do this, that we maybe have a little bit leg up on this, because as it's noted by a number of people outside of Batavia, Batavia is the only place that really has opened up the banks of the Fox River for bicycle travel and pedestrians to walk and people to hike on both banks of the river. And again, I'm not going to name any names of neighboring communities, but there's some places nearby us here that that's not the case, that, passage through a town is extremely limited and only by some interesting paths across. And so Batavia is the one that is cited as the place to come. We're kind of the circle interchange of the western suburbs for bicycle traffic, because we let you come into town and let you on both sides of the river, and we let you go into the business district, and we give you information, and there's all kinds of stuff we're doing here. So we get a lot of credit, and we quite honestly, in Chicago, they tell me we may have one of the biggest bicycle traffic numbers in the area, because we have all this availability and fairness and understanding for the paths, and we have a couple of very good bicycle shops in town that regionally, I think, carry very good reputations, and people know if they come out here and something happens to a tire or a pedal or whatever, there's some great people in the bicycle business who are right there, right on the trail of the thing, and can put you back into shape. Other thing is, we've got, I've heard this in Chicago, we're the ones with a McDonald's restaurant in our downtown, a half a block away from the bicycle trail, and McDonald's is the bathroom of America. So if you need a bathroom, Batavia's got it. It's right there on the bike trail. So by accident or hook or crook, we have done everything we can to really promote the bicycle business, and it's here. And I think all of us see it on an ongoing basis. I am told that some weekends we have over 5,000 bicycles ride through our town from Friday through Sunday. And so I was part of this when it was all started. I will tell you that when we first proposed putting bicycle trails in this town, it was kind of like some of these meetings we've had in here rather recently on other subjects. There were all kinds of people that this was going to depreciate their property. This was going to be robbers and drug dealers in their backyards. There were going to be loud noises and people partying at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was going to be the ruination of the whole place. Well, we went ahead and did it, and lo and behold, to this point in time, it doesn't seem to have been that's the case. It's been very positive reaction by visitors and public people who live here. I think you'd have a hard time arguing that the bicycle trail is depreciated anybody's property values. So, I mean, it's a pretty positive story. It's something I think as a community we should be very proud of, and one that we should try to hold on. And I really subscribe to the idea, as Scott has just mentioned, that we should try to plan for it and continue to keep it as a goal and a vision. And we should apply for some grants, because I think we have a compelling case for bicycles here, and that we should try to, put it together and within the next 5 to 10 years, put it into practice.
Thanks, Mayor. Mike, you have anything?
Yeah, I agree also with the vision and the dream of creating this. I think it'll make our budget talks very interesting. So we'll see what happens when budget time comes.
Lucy?
I'm in favor of the vision of number 1. I thought 2 was interesting and a nice alternative. I think 3 would be very problematic, and I think 4 would be good in the short term.
Gary, so it kind of sounds like everybody, the consensus is, and I'll get to the public here in just a minute. Oh, you already had yours.
I
You want to do it again?
comment. I really think that, it's not just the bike path, but it's also the work on the river. I think there's a lot of different ways to justify doing this. I mean, I really feel like we're all on the right track, and I think we're pretty much all on the same page on it. I think we just have to figure out how to fund it.
Okay, so you probably got the consensus of where we're at with it. But let me ask you, since if we were to put it along the river, but we can't make that decision now because of the funding and grants and all this kind of stuff, what's the process? I mean, obviously, you'd put this option in here that you got up on the screen for temporarily for now, but what's the process as far as pursuing that other goal of relocating it along the river? And do you have to take that ultimate goal into consideration as they're working on our construction of the improvements of the sewage treatment plant?
So that was one of the reasons why we hired Trotter to do these conceptual layouts, was for them to be aware of what the future treatment plant is going to look like, and then how they could incorporate the bike trail and make it work with those improvements. So certainly, we cannot now go and make one of the improvements as part of Phase 2 or Phase 3, impacting the corridor for this potential future path without everyone being on the same page. So hopefully that answers that part of it, that when we get to Phase 2 and Phase 3, the design will account for this future corridor, and if something comes up at that point in time, everyone will be made aware of it as to what that might mean. But presumably that's why we had tried to work on this corridor, was to be able to identify something that's possible to make it work.
Okay.
So that's step number 1. Step number 2, with regards to the funding, and this is where both Rahat and I haven't been through the ITAP process. So we need to look at those applications, and as far as how much detail they need in those applications for drawings in support of a grant application, that's something we'll further research kind of out of tonight's discussions. Is the conceptual layout enough to submit a grant application, or do we need to take it to another step? But that's something we'll have to come back. If we need to come back for further work, we'd have to come back to council for.
Okay. And I guess the only other question I have is, should we, in carrying on with Scott's original thought, should we not only look at this area, but do a overall, what do I want to call it, master plan from that area up to, say, the boat club area of the riverfront?
Yeah, I'll be the wet blanket in the room. A master plan will run you $100,000, $200,000. And if the city doesn't have money to implement it, it's going to be $100,000, $200,000 that sits on the shelf and never gets used. That's just, I mean, being my experience with other communities, communities are great at studies.
Yeah.
Because they can parade the study before and say, hey, to the citizens, here is our plan. And oh, by the way, we don't have any money to implement it.
Well, and we hired engineering resource, was it?
We hired engineering resource associates to do stream bank stabilization between the treatment plant and the pedestrian bridge on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
They got so far as to identify the scope of improvements and a cost estimate, which was $1.5 million, at which time council said we don't have the money to do that, and we went back with just a very small improvement to do the utilities. So that would be, again, that's why I'm the wet blanket, because I don't know where we're coming up with the funding for, if this is $5 million, multiply that by 5 or 6 times, throw a dam in there, that's another $15 million that you got to take care of. I mean, at some point in time, you say, this is a wonderful plan, and it's great to have a vision, and it's great to have a plan, but if there isn't a desire to raise that kind of money in the community, To what end is the plan?
Why don't we open it up to the public if anybody's got anything they want to comment on this one? Please give us your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Betsy Zinzer, and I'm serving as the director of the food pantry. And I wanted to first thank the staff very much for including that parking on Flynn Street. It makes a real difference to our organization. The second thing is I just want to confirm that option 4 that you're discussing today is the picture that is currently on the screen with those 19 parking spaces. Is that correct? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. It's a little different than I think was in the memo, and I just, thank you.
Anyone else?
Still Matt Knowles, at 380 Bradford Circle on this round. Mayor, thank you for the kind words. I'll take a few of those as a side compliment if I can. Over the years, 9 years I've lived here, I've probably spoken on this at least once every couple of years, and I will continue to do so as long as I live in this town. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where we have a 5-mile stretch of river on both sides that has beautiful walkways and parks, and it's literally amazing. And it's taken them 30, 40 years to do this, and it takes a long-term plan and a master plan to do so. And I know it's money to spend, but there can't be a better expense. And it needs to go to the public, and they need to be able to visualize it, to see it. And I think you'd be really surprised at how many people would really kind of freak out if they saw that and be like, really, we're going to do this? And I'm like, well, we could, but the possibility is really kind of up to them, and we need to put it to them so that I think you'll find how important it is to them. One of the shops on the river, I hear at least once a month in the 7 years I've been there, I moved to this town because of the riverfront, because of the bike path. I mean, these are hundreds and hundreds of people that tell me the only reason they moved here is because of the bike path and the river. So I am so happy to see that this is progressing and that I really support it. So thanks.
Thanks. I would, envision myself, if we were to go further with a master plan, that we would do something similar to what we did with the streetscape plan. Alderman O'Brien, you were a part of that. Alderman Wolf, you were here then too. And that was where we got the community involvement. We made a commission made up by many different people throughout the community to get the community input, ideas, buy-in, and it worked. We came up with some great ideas, and then we moved forward with the plan on it. And so if we move forward, I would suggest we do something similar to that. But as far as tonight, I guess, Gary, you're looking for direction, and I'm hearing that the direction is to pursue or to go ahead with item number 4, option number 4 for now, but to, as you mentioned, you and Rahad look at what necessary steps it would take to explore option 1 for the future.
And follow up with the grant process.
Right.
And report back to City Council.
Does that sound right to everybody?
Yeah, just so for clarity's sake, I mean, we still have major work happening at the wastewater treatment plant. And
Yeah, there is.
there is, go figure.
Really?
And so this bike path will kind of be incorporated into part of that work.
Yeah, this is actually already even on the plan. So I mean,
Okay.
the screen above you is basically what's already on the plans.
So it's not going to happen overnight, I guess.
No, this option number 4 will. I mean, that's why we set up the long-term detour. This option number 4 won't be in existence until next summer. I mean, the latter part of next summer.
Okay, so more to come, right?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item 10, project status. Laura?
Okay, just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of, we're going to have a special committee of the whole meeting on Monday, October 30th, and that will start at 7 o'clock, if that's okay with everybody. And that is going to be to discuss the Campana project and to review the responses to the questions that were submitted following the last city council meeting. And then from there, the matter will again be on the agenda for November 6th city council meeting. Storehenge is expected to be installed this week. Our ongoing leaf collection efforts, the streets crew have been able to, in some cases, get out ahead of their schedule for leaf pickup this year, which was great because the wet weather like we've been having the last few days really hampers those efforts. But thus far, everything seems to be on track. Continuing to work on the Colonial Village electrical project. We received Army Corps of Engineers permits for the utility riverbank stabilization project so that we can move forward on that. And we're still working to obtain the remaining easements that we need. We are also finalizing the 5-year maintenance period with the Army Corps of Engineers for the maintenance of the Brayburn Marsh. One other project I wanted to bring up was that staff will be having a pre-construction meeting with Metronet on Friday of this week. As you're aware, we've signed both a franchise agreement and pole attachment agreement with Metronet to provide both cable and communications to our citizens, offer them a new choice. But it's been quite some time since the city has embarked in a construction project of communication infrastructure like this. So we want to make sure that we do so very carefully. Metronet wants to begin with doing as much of the underground construction as they can before the ground freezes, but they do believe that they'll be able to continue construction during the winter months, doing some of the aerial installations on the electric poles throughout the winter and continuing into the spring. Some citizens have received a letter already notifying them that they will be among the first areas where the installation will happen. And prior to any construction beginning, Metronet has been working very closely with city staff to make sure that there is a very comprehensive communication plan so that people will be very aware that Metronet is coming, and make sure that should one of our residents call the city, they will be able to obtain the information that they're looking for about the construction schedule. We're also looking to put that information on our website as well, so that perhaps they can even see a map of what areas will be done in what time frame. And that's all that I have, unless somebody has some questions for me. Alderman Ewer?
You mentioned the Army Corps a couple times. Have you had any more contact with the Army Corps contact I gave you about the dam?
She said that she would get back to me when the joint project between the Army Corps of Engineers and Illinois Department of Natural Resources completed their study.
Okay.
Peggy?
Hi. I have something under other for the bond information.
Yes.
I came to you last week to talk about issuing debt for the stormwater and sewer separation and for the windows here at City Hall. And I passed on the information to Gary Holm in regards to whether or not we could do more projects than what we had laid out when I came to you with the dollar amount. And we had several emails and discussions this week, and it was determined that we really can't take on any more projects than doing $5 million for the storm sewer work with this bond issue, because there are a lot of projects that we have going on. Just to name a few, so we have the Area 2 and 3 sewer separation, the Ward 1 drainage improvements, Prairie Street reconstruction, which will be started to be designed next year and then reconstructed in 2019. That is a very large project, $3.2 million in total, And Main Street is 5.3 million, not including the water main. So there are a lot of projects that they're doing. When we issue the debt, we have to spend the money in 3 years. So we don't want to borrow more than we think we can really get done. So we are recommending a $6 million bond issue. I also contacted our financial advisor, and we have already put together the preliminary official statement. It goes pretty quickly as we start to put these things together. And we have a rating meeting set up for November 1st. So that'll be coming up very quickly. So I wanted to make sure that the city council was on board with that dollar amount and not wanting to push for more work. Gary is here if you have questions for him in that regard. No questions? Everyone's good then with the 6 million to move forward? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Peggy.
Okay, I've got a question under others. With Thanksgiving coming up and just kind of I know everybody's getting pretty busy with family and everything, so we've got 2 Tuesdays right around Thanksgiving. We got the 21st and the 28th. Does it look like we're all going to be around, or do we need to consider not having a meeting on one of those 2 weeks?
The week of Thanksgiving, I've had some people tell me they think they're going to be unavailable.
That's what I'm afraid of on that week particularly. So we could give staff the warning that we won't have a meeting on that Tuesday, the 21st?
Is that okay for budget meetings?
I was going to say, so if we have to have budget meetings, we'll just move it to the 28th.
You got to use the mic.
We'll move the budget meetings to the 28th if we need another one. Is that what we're planning on? So the only one we'd give up would be the 21st?
Yep.
I mean, I think that we have to give, obviously, the budget priority at the moment, and some of this other stuff that's languishing out there, they may just have to wait.
Yep. Okay, that's all we have then under others?
It's been something that's kind of popped up a couple times, and I know it's that I've gotten emails on, and it's lighting. I talked to Gary about it a couple times. I'm not sure what happened prior to me coming on board, if that was a discussion that was ever brought before council. We just had one citizen, and then it kind of popped up on Facebook recently, some complaints about the streetlights and the intensity of them, I guess, the new LED streetlights, and I don't know if it's something that has been talked about before, other than an email here and there.
I've never had any issues with it. I mean, you get the occasional guy that doesn't like the light in front of his house.
Exactly. That's what this is about, and so it kind of popped up recently as one of those.
Then I get the occasional guy that says, why don't we put more streetlights in too?
And I get that point of it because there is a definite safety thing. I mean, when I drive down the road and it's like, wow, I can see a lot better, and I can tell if there's a pedestrian that may be thinking about running across the street, there's a huge safety benefit there, and I'll slow down more than
I think to piggyback with what the mayor said, there's an awful lot of stuff, and what Peggy just said, there's an awful lot of stuff on everybody's plates, and to start talking about whether or not we should be adding or taking away streetlights should be very low on the priority.
I just wasn't sure if it had ever been brought up before, I guess was my question, just because I've been hit with it a few times now, so.
No.
We did actually, back before we chose the lights that we have, and I was trying to peek out the window, I think one of them's still sitting out there. We had erected lights out here and paraded city council out one evening. We talked about induction lighting, we talked about various LED fixtures. There was 3 or 4 entire cow meetings devoted to whether we should have yellow lights or white lights in the downtown. So there was a lot of discussion at the council level as to where we got to today.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. With that, then we'll go into executive session for the purpose of purchase of real estate. We're not going to be getting anything coming out of the executive session in that regard?
No.
Okay. All right, so we need to go into executive session. I need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Well, motion by O'Brien, second by Salvati. All in favor?
Aye.